often the product is what can be aggravating, is the enemy often for people that have a lot of inflammation on the surface.
Welcome to the Learn Skin podcast with me, Dr. Raja.
And me, Dr. Hadar, where we discuss all things skin.
Join us as we delve into the art and science of skin health in today's episode.
Hey, Raja, can you say the thing I told you to tell them?
Of course. We are board-certified dermatologists. This podcast is meant for educational and informational purposes only and is not considered medical advice, nor does it serve as a substitute for professional care by a doctor or other qualified medical professional. All opinions shared do not express the views of Learn Health, Inc. Let's get to the good stuff.
Hey, Raja, how are you today?
Hey, Hadar. How are things going for you? I've been thinking more and more about how we approach skincare. Shouldn't we be talking to people that are integrating from multiple perspectives?
There you go. That's what I've been thinking too. And, we've been dealing with how to integrate all of health span and all of healthcare into dermatology, really trying to take an approach that considers the entire patient and their background and where they're coming from, what they're eating, how they're sleeping, everything that has to do with them and how does that impact their skin health. And, we've seen a lot of practitioners who practice health and the skin. So Ayurvedic practitioners and traditional Chinese medicine practitioners and on, and naturopathic doctors. We have all of them on the program, but it is, I think, the first time that we're going to have an Ayurvedic esthetician on this program right here live for you listening at home. Is that true?
That is exactly what's happening. We have Elisha Reverby. She is a licensed esthetician. She's also an Ayurvedic wellness educator and chef. And she's going to talk to us about how she combines both of these modalities. Elisha, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. I'm excited to share the story.
Okay, we got to start from the beginning here.
Yes.
Why esthetician and why Ayurveda? Where did this all start for you?
Well, why esthetician? Well, why Ayurveda? Let's start there because that's really before I even moved into deciding to be an esthetician. So from the home I grew up in as a little girl, I grew up with a mom who was, I call her a progressive food fighter. And I grew up in a home where food was delicious medicine. I was taught very strong values about using food. We weren't sick kids growing up, and I cooked with my mom, and food was our medicine. And she would also give us very interesting concoctions as kids, and all kinds of these broths and teas. And once she did a niacin flush with us, and we were like, "Oh my God, what's going on? Our skin's burning." She's like, "Don't worry, kids, you're fine." So it was it was a home where I had this foundation that my body heals itself, and to respect my body, to take care of my body. You only have one. My mom would tell me when I was very little, and she very much respected food and the power of food. And so moving forward, so I had this foundation and it already, my footing was already there. And then moving forward, I always loved food and cooking, and I started a catering business when I was 21. And I had an on-location catering business. I was on set with, Geffen Films and Warner Brothers, and I was creating and this was way back in the day. This is the early 90s, and I was before, now I think on sets they have really beautiful, healthy food, but then they didn't. But I was creating all of this really healthy, nutritious food for craft service, for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. In my mind, I wanted to have a skincare brand as well. My background being in food and beauty, I always wanted to have a skincare brand. I got detoured a little bit with the catering, but they both always came together. And I ended up, I was catering for years and cooking, but I really wanted to create this brand that I had in my vision and in my mind before there were any natural skincare brands on the market. And so 5 years later, after having my catering business, I was 26, and I stepped into my vision of what I wanted to create. And that's where I learned about Ayurveda from a book by Dr. Pratima Rayshur, which you may know, Absolute Beauty. And I picked up this book, and within the first minute of reading this book, I was like, oh my God, my mom has been teaching me Ayurveda my entire life. And it was everything made sense. Everything was so familiar, so much was what my mom was teaching me, but had no name attached to it. I am not of Indian descent. I did not grow up in a home that was Ayurveda in tradition and in culture. It was just these, I like to say they're very indigenous beliefs of people that come from, my mom was mixed Black Chinese and loved Chinese medicine. And so I think it just all comes from this like primitive way of living, of using food and the earth and the environment. And so reading Dr. Pratima's book, I was able to put a name to what I knew my whole life and my foundation, which was Ayurveda. And that gave me something else. That gave me a stronger understanding of what I really wanted to do with my products and my skincare and what I wanted to create, because again, it was, I don't use the word impossible because it's nothing's impossible. At the time, it was near impossible for a 20-year-old young woman who had, no trust fund, no money, no experience in skin. I just loved food, and I loved herbs, and I loved plants, and I loved the power that they held. And I wanted people to know this as well. And I wanted to create a skincare brand. And so that's how it tied together. That's how everything came together. I wanted a food-based skincare brand. Because I thought, well, if food can heal you from the inside out, then food should also be able to nourish the skin from the outside in. The skin is an external organ. It has to fight battles, so many battles on the daily, on the external, many of which we impose on ourselves with product and unhealthy lifestyles and so many lifestyle habits. And then, of course, the natural functions of your skin, which are so varied and diverse. And so I thought, well, we should be able to nourish the skin topically as well using food. And people thought I was crazy. I was mentored by the Society of Cosmetic Chemists. I was taken under their wing to learn the industry of beauty, to learn how to write product profiles, to learn the conventional path of how you start a product line. But I always wanted to do something different. And, that's really, it's been a journey since then. But I've learned in all of these years, and pretty soon after, I ended up going to beauty school because I thought, well, if I'm going to create a skincare brand, I need to know skin. I can't just have a skincare brand. I've never touched skin. I don't know all these different skin conditions I'm reading about and that I'm learning about. And that is why I went to school to get my esthetician's license so that I could practice. And so I can start using foods in my practice, which is what I did and what I still do. But initially I was using a lot of fresh foods in my practice.
Right. Excellent. There's so many things I want to tell you, Elisha, but I'm going to start by saying that what I love about your story, and I think that's something that everybody can relate to, is this idea that you start with a passion, which, by the way, you mentioned in the 90s, you're 26. And so I don't know how many, couple of decades later, your passion is still coming through. So God bless you. That passion, whatever it is you're doing, keep doing it. But the point is that you're going from a passion to a training, and not the other way around. And I think that's something that often I see in trainees that come through my shop. Heck, I even tell it to my kids. Have a passion, something you want to do, something that you want to focus on, some change you want to create, then go seek the right training for it. But then you said the second part, which I think is so crucial, which is you train, you learn the convention. You have to understand it. You have to have a thorough understanding of the field that you're in. And then you can break through from that. Only by really learning, understanding the fundamentals can you then really, break from it and create your own niche and your own kind of rhythm to dance to. So I think it's fantastic. What a great example. I mean, I can't say enough about that. So thank you for sharing that. I know, I think a lot of our listeners are saying, all right, that was a very inspiring story, but what makes an esthetician an Ayurvedic esthetician? In practice, in real life, does your client feel anything different?
So what would make an esthetician stand out and call themselves an Ayurvedic esthetician would be the amount of time the amount of investigation, and before I even studied Ayurveda formally, because I was self-taught for years, because once I picked up that book of Dr. Pratima's, I was all in with Ayurveda, and I read everything about Ayurveda, and I was studying Ayurveda and self-taught in Ayurveda. And then it was only up until before COVID that I decided to get some formal training. But even before that, I always knew intuitively, and then with Ayurveda confirmed so much of what I already knew, that I had to get to the root of the problem. And maybe that had to do with my mom's upbringing as well, and using food as medicine and healing, that we don't put a Band-Aid on something to fix it. So if someone is coming to me with acne, I intuitively knew, or dermatitis, or, atopic dermatitis, I knew that I had to ask a lot of questions. I had to inquire about their lifestyle, their sleep, their diet, what they're eating, what they're not eating, what's missing, not just what they're doing, but what's missing, what pieces do we need to fill in here. I had to look at them. I had to look at their skin. I had to look at their hair. I had to look at their eyes. I had to really listen and spend a good amount of time to create a tailored individual protocol and routine and treatment right then and there in real time, because they're usually coming to me to have a skincare treatment for them.
On that note, Elisha, I have a question for you. So, when a person goes and sees an esthetician, obviously there's a set analysis that people do, that are taught through the conventional approaches. Can you give us two specific examples of how you might view the skin differently from an Ayurvedic lens? What are like two specific things that you might ask that are different, or two things that you might do that are different, just as examples for our listeners?
Yeah, well, one thing that I don't focus on so much is like your product. Yes, your product plays a role, especially if you have a skin condition, but it's more about your routine with that product. I'm not like so heavy into talking about your product and how many times you're cleansing and what's going on with all of the product. Because often I've found, and I hope that no one takes this personally that's listening, other estheticians, but there's this quota of like selling products. So it's like always about the product. Whereas for me, I want to know more. If I'm going to talk about your skincare routine, I'll ask questions like, are you washing your face in the shower? Like you coming to me and you have really chronically dry skin, you're very red, you have, a lot of inflammation on the surface. Are you washing your face in the shower? Are you doing a double cleanse? Are you rubbing your face with that facial cleanser in your hand, as opposed to working up the lather in your hands first and then gently sweeping that cleanser across the face and rinsing, so we're not rubbing on the face? I ask questions more about their technique and what they're physically doing. Are they rinsing? How well are they rinsing this product off of their skin? Because often when you talk to people about their routine, it's like very fast. They're like run in, they might splash some cold water on their face and take a bunch of cleanser, rub it all over their face, and maybe do like one or two rinses, and then take a towel and rub their face and leave, and maybe put on a moisturizer. They'll put some moisturizer on their skin instead of perhaps really prepping the skin first, warming up the skin, loosening up any surface debris on the skin, so you need less product, because often the product is what can be aggravating, is the enemy often for people that have a lot of inflammation on the surface. Your product, you're using way too much of it. You don't even know why you're using it. You have no understanding of it. You just bought it because it was either recommended by Vogue magazine, or because it was on Instagram, or because it said acne cleanser on the front.
I think that is so true. Sometimes the marketing takes the king's bite of how people actually choose. So on that note, actually, Elisha, I love that you're talking about some of these things that we take for granted. Maybe, if you don't mind, let's go through maybe from an Ayurvedic perspective. If someone is, we have the 3 doshas, and it's not that everybody has one dosha, but they can be heavy. Just for purposes of our discussion, though, I would love if we could look at, what does it mean because so the 3 doshas are vata, which is much more with dryness, and pitta with more inflammation, kapha, maybe that's a lot more like oily and whatnot. But regardless, can you take us through and I think this is what a lot of people are interested in, is like, how do I approach a personalized take on my skin. So if someone has a Vata skin type, maybe let's start there. What are two things you
Mhm.
say they could do and a couple things that they shouldn't do? And then if you don't mind, let's go through the different skin dosha dominant types, because I think that'd be really fun. We've never done that before.
Yeah, sure. So someone with a Vata skin that's coming to see me and I'm looking at their skin and I can just see the dryness, the lines, the fine lines are very prominent. The hair is really dry and brittle. I would topically and in my treatment, I would also do an oil cleanse with them. I would really massage and cleanse with a beautiful nourishing oil, an almond oil, an avocado oil, a plum oil, something just really emollient and nourishing. And we would cleanse with that oil and do some massage as well, move a little bit of stagnation. I know that Vata is movement, but Vata is also stagnation, right? That's when you think of like elimination and being stuck or constipation with people that are predominant Vata. So helping to move, get that prana flowing and be able to really help to eliminate any kind of debris and waste below the surface of the skin, which is your lymphatic system. So, but oil topically at home, I would teach people how to cleanse with an oil as well. I would show them how to do this at home because a lot of people would be scared, like, how do I cleanse with an oil? And so I would show you, I have a video on YouTube to also show people how to cleanse with an oil properly. And then also I would say when you get in the shower at home that you want to put a thin coating of an oil on your face before you get in the shower to really protect yourself against those elements in the shower, protect yourself against the heat, protect yourself against the shampoo and the fragrances and the body washes and the soaps. You want to have a nice barrier there. And then when you come out of the shower, you want to give yourself like 5 minutes. And then you can go ahead with that residue of oil that's on your skin. You can massage it in, and then you can wipe it off with a hydrosol. I work with hydrosols. I've been working with hydrosols for 30 years. I've worked with the same distillers for close to 23 years. They are phenomenal on the skin. For people that don't know what a hydrosol is, they are an essential water. So they are the sister to your essential oil. They are not as complex and volatile. They are the water element of that plant or flower. They are also acidic in their pH. So they really have this beautiful synergy with the skin. And you can cleanse with them. They're fantastic for cleansing the skin. If you're afraid of cleanser and you're like, oh my God, like again, people with acne, people with redness, people with inflammation, they're just afraid to cleanse, use a hydrosol, use a beautiful hydrosol on your skin. And also that topical hydration, right? That surface hydration and that really gentle way to take off your oil using this nourishment. And the other beautiful thing about hydrosols, I just interrupted myself, but I want to say for Vata dosha is that Vata is like worry and fear and stress, and that can really communicate with the symptoms that you're having with your skin, right? You're not sleeping well, you're not eating well because you're like so worrisome, you have restless leg syndrome, you can't stop thinking, you're awake, and it's like creating all of these external symptoms that using this hydrosol in aromatherapy, hydrosols were in fact the first aromatherapy before essential oils. They were the first distillates. It was Avicenna, Persian Iranian distiller, who is like the founding father.
Yeah, there's quite some history to it, isn't there? I mean, I love the fact that you're talking about hydrosols because I know a lot of people talk about essential oils, but they have those terpenoids, and I think when you go to the water base, you really reduce a lot of those chemicals. This is really fun. Can you talk about the Pitta skin type? I know that. I mean, I wish we could spend the whole podcast on Vata. Let's talk Pitta. Now, what would you do for the Pitta skin?
So Pitta. So you're coming to me and I see a lot of Pitta. I might see a lot of inflammation on the surface. I might even see a combination oily, like a rosacea skin, a lot of oiliness, some clamminess, which could parlay to kapha as well. But, Pitta is also water element. It's fire and water. So, and it's skin. It is hyperpigmentation, which is when we can get into our fatty acids and how they can brighten the skin and help to speed up skin cell turnover to move some of these melanocytes out. These essential fatty acids are reparative. They're essential for maintaining this barrier.
But actually, it's really interesting that you're mentioning that, because they've done studies on rosacea, even though you're oily. From Dublin in Ireland, Frank Powell did some studies there showing that even though people might produce oils, they have a deficiency in producing the ones that are actually connected to the barrier. So it's really interesting that you're talking about, even in that scenario, adding some more support.
Yeah, the fatty acids are essential. And anyone that has, whether you're Vata, Pitta, or Kapha, if you're coming in and you have a damaged barrier, I'm going to get down with some fatty acids. It's what I do. I've relied on them in my practice for as long as I've been practicing. My clients have amazing results, whether we're using these beautiful oils topically or you're also taking a supplement, an evening primrose supplement, a borage oil supplement. That's really important, Vata, Pitta, or Kapha. Definitely Vata needs some fats and needs these essentials. There's a depletion. There's something going on. You're off balance in these healthy fats. Anyone with like a strict barrier, there's dryness and itchiness, redness, inflammation, your barrier repair. We need to definitely look at your lifestyle with Pitta. I want to know what you're eating. I want to help you tweak your diet. And I want to do a lot of compressing of the skin, like cool tea compressing. In my practice, first of all, I never do extractions in my practice. I don't pick and prod at people's skin. I don't put a steamer on someone's face. I don't just layer these products on people. I use my hands very often, whether I am doing a thorough deep massage or I'm doing what I call palming the face, where I have my hands constantly in my pool of hydrosols and I am taking my entire hands and putting them on your face and holding and doing very slight lymphatic movements. I'm Dr. Vadar trained manual lymphatic drainage therapist. So these like very subtle movements to move some lymph, to open up and help some move out this waste to purify your skin from the inside out. I want to open up your neck area and get to that terminus where that drainage is, where these nodes are, and really work there. But for Pitta, cooling, a lot of compressing, and I'll do some honey, I always use honey in my practice. And I want to have a conversation about your routine and your diet, like what could be exacerbating in your routine that you're doing. Because people that come in with a Pitta type of skin, they're usually doing way too much. You can't blame them. I mean, when you have a skin condition, fear sets in and you're running to the drugstore or to the department store, wherever you buy your skincare products to get something that's going to remedy that out of fear. Like, oh my God, what's happening with my skin? And that is where the trouble begins. We start doing too much.
Now, Elisha, let me stop you there because I want to also get to Kapha. And if you can summarize that, give us a couple of little thoughts on Kapha skin type.
Kapha, we could use some nice clays in the Kapha might be clammy. Kapha might need some purification also with lymphatic movements. There's that stagnation with Kapha, like let's get some fluids moving, but let's also like purify topically by using some clays, some astringency topically with Kapha. Maybe I'll use a lemon hydrosol. I have a beautiful Meyer lemon hydrosol or a pomegranate seed oil, which is really beautiful. And I'll really go in also with some deep massage and finish with the lymphatic drainage, the technique of lymphatic drainage, because we're going to drain with lymph in our massage, but this slow movement when we're finished after the deep massage, which can bring a lot of waste into that interstitial fluid. So we want to move that out. And talking to them about their diet as well, getting some more bitter and astringent foods, which are the two tastes in Ayurveda that rarely in our Western diet are we consuming. It's missing from our diet. So I want to make sure that Kapha has these beautiful skin foods topically and some of these astringent skin foods topically. And then even like a nice apple, like taking a raw apple and grating it and using that in a mask on the skin topically for the astringency of it and the nourishment of it. And then, looking at the diet.
Yeah, actually, just to kind of wrap this up, leading up to the last part, which is, I guess, the dessert, no pun intended here. But I know that part of what you do is being a chef, and I saw on your website you have a bunch of books that direct people to food. And I wonder if in a couple of sentences you could discuss how you now weave in the food into all this, because I think that it makes you so unique, right? The esthetician training, the Ayurvedic training, which you gave us a really cool approach to that. Where do you weave in the food and something basic? Like, do you start with that? Is that something that you add like on the third visit that you start talking to people? How do you weave in the whole diet aspect into the regimen?
Well, that's a great question because it's always from, the beginning. I mean, it's who I am. We're not going to wait to talk about your diet and what you're eating. We have to get down to that right away. Again, presuming this person is coming in with a skin condition that is, either not diagnosed or they just haven't had any results. I'm all about results. My clients have results. They come to me because they have results with their skin. It's up to them. It's challenging. In the beginning of my practice, no one wanted to hear me talk about food and nutrition with their skincare. They wanted me to just sell them products.
Right.
And it was very challenging for many years because I'm not that person. That's not my practice. I don't want people, my clients and potential clients I don't want to train their mind to think that product is their solution all the time. Like it's just product. You just have to keep buying more product. I mean, so much of what can remedy you have at home. And so I always have that conversation with them. It's my responsibility to not contribute to this confused customer that is just spending money on product.
Well, I think that's a great attitude. And thank you so much for joining us. This has been a really cool tour on how to weave in Ayurvedic practice into an esthetician world. And we only scratch the surface on food. I mean, that's one of my favorite topics, and I'm sure we could talk about it forever. But I like the way you bring everything together to your clients, which I'm sure have a great result, as you mentioned. Well, Elisha, thank you so much for joining us on this podcast. We, as I said, just scratched the surface, but I really hope that our listeners got a sense of what a unique offering an integrative esthetician can give, be it if you're a patient, a client wants to get services, or maybe you're a dermatologist looking to branch out and bring a certain esthetician to your practice. There you have it. Go the integrative route. Thank you, Elisha, for your time and your expertise.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
And that's a wrap for today's episode. But these conversations are just way too good to end here. Wouldn't you agree, Raja?
Absolutely, Hadar. That's one of the main reasons I get so excited about our conference, the Integrative Dermatology Symposium. Every year, it's a chance for us to continue expanding our minds for what's possible in dermatology for our patients, and also to bring the latest clinical knowledge back to the clinic. And this year's theme has been long awaited. Do you want to spill the beans?
Oh, yes. You don't want to miss this one, folks. This year's theme is Nurturing Skin Resilience, the Science of Aging and Wellness. And it's happening from September 26th to the 29th, 2024.
Yes, and we'll cover topics from conventional medicine to traditional approaches, from inflammaging to exosomes, and from cosmeceuticals to women's health, and more.
The agenda lineup looks amazing. Not only the topics, but also the real-world case discussions, workshops, and networking events. No wonder we've expanded the IDS to 4 days. So much more to learn and do.
Plus, you can't go wrong at a brand new resort that just opened up this year at the Lowe's Arlington Hotel and Convention Center in Arlington, Texas.
Texas, here we come. And for our esthetician colleagues, please join us on Sunday for the Integrative Aesthetics track.
So come check out integrativedermatologysymposium.com for all the details. We hope to see you there.